do an APA format. Raise your hand if you have done APA format before. Good job, Tyra. Okay.
No, you do
Good job, Tyra.
English. You can English in the state.
Okay, you do.
Yeah.
So APA format is it's the scientific way that we do write-ups. Okay, so that's what we do for scientific write-up is APA. I'll talk you through a little bit of that format, but it's really the conclusion where you need to have the APA format. The other portion of this lab write-up is all going to be typed. And what you're going to do for the lab write-up is you'll type it and it'll look like most of your other labs. Any labs that you've done in science, they have to have a title. So you're going to title it. Your title may be Death by Bagot, but you'll title it. So you're going to have a title right there. And you will write title and then write the title. So I want it that specific so that I see title, you write the title. After that, you're then going to have an introduction. After all the labs I've given you guys, there's an introduction that tells you this is what we are doing. So you are going to create that. Where you can get that is you guys had to write the 2-page paper as your ticket to do your eco column. You remember that 2-page paper? That's got some good introductory info in it. You can basically take that and summarize it into 10 sentences and use that as your introduction to your lab of what you would teach someone else. So what you're trying to develop is something that you could give to a stranger, and a stranger that doesn't really probably like science, and they could actually carry out this lab. That's what you're trying to create. So that 10 sentences is just going to be an overall summary of what we're going to do. Then you're going to create a tentative hypothesis. You probably want to write this down. A tentative hypothesis is basically you don't really know much about it, but you're going to guess and make a kind of guess on the knowledge that you have in your brain. But you haven't done any research. So a tentative hypothesis would be, I'm going to build an eco column, then my organism will survive. That's real generic. You don't really know much, but you put some information down on a paper that you're guessing with. After you put the tentative hypothesis down, you're then going to create what is your final hypothesis. A final hypothesis is one that you have done a lot of research over, and you are educated in writing it. What format do all hypotheses have to be in?
If then.
Very good. If then. So if I do this, then this will happen. So I'm going to give you an idea of a good hypothesis. And this is going to sound maybe foreign language to you, but it is English. If I build my eco column to mimic Earth's biogeochemical cycles and they are all properly functioning, then all living life in my eco column will survive. It's a little bit fancier than the first one. The first one just says, if I build an eco column, then my organisms survive. Well, what really is causing the stability of it? In your hypothesis, the if side has the independent variable, and the then side has the what? Say it loud, guys. Dependent variable. So if I build my eco column so that all biogeochemical cycles are functioning, then all organisms in my eco column will survive. So that's a good hypothesis that's your final. You then have to do your materials. Your materials you need to separate into 2 categories. One category will be for the design of the eco column. The other category is going to be the materials for the kits that you use. So you're going to have the design of the eco column and then the kits. Everything you used. Did you use an X-Acto knife? Did you use scissors? Did you use cotton balls? Did you use rubber bands? Did you use gauze? Did you use rocks? Did you use an aquatic plant? All of those things have to be listed. When you get to something that is living, that item that you list has to have the common name and the scientific name. So in the materials, when you get to something that is living, it has to have the common name and the scientific name. Somebody raise your hand and tell me how you correctly write something in the scientific form. What is the scientific form?
The first name is capitalized and the last one is lowercase.
Perfect. She said the first one is capitalized and the second name is lowercase. First name is the genus. Second name is the species. Very good. So you're going to write that in your materials. Then your other materials are going to be the kits. You can either take pictures of the kits or you can go on to, because I purchased the kits from Carolina Biological. You can go on to their website and look at all the kits to write the materials down. So Carolina Biological is where you can write the kits down. Do we need to put it up? Are they gonna?
Yes.
Okay, go put it up. We don't want fish fighting.
I do, that's the next
So Carolina Biological is where you can find the list of all the kits. After you do the materials, and the materials should be bulleted. They have to be bulleted. So you'll title one title, materials for eco column design, and then you'll bullet everything. Then you'll go to the next one, which is the eco column kits, test kits, and you'll write nitrate kit, and then you'll bullet for the nitrate. Then you'll go to the phosphate kit, and then you'll do the same thing. Are y'all good? Are you so excited about this? I'll help you. If you're confused, we'll get to help. After materials, you're then going to have safety. Safety in this lab, y'all know, was a definite issue, and we still are monitoring ourselves if anything gets on us. And pay attention. So if anything gets on us, you have to rinse it for 15 minutes. But that's not just the safety that I want. When you're in college, you will have to go to the MSDS. MSDS stands for Material Safety Data Sheets. You probably heard about those in chemistry a long time ago. But those MSDS sheets you have to find for each of the bad things in those kits. So if it is something that could hurt you, an irritant, a corrosive, any of those things, you have to find the MSDS sheet and print those off for each one. I know we're about saving the environment, but right now I'm about teaching more than saving the environment. So I gotta make sure that you know how to print these off. So MSDS sheets, you have to have those for each of the items.
Where do we?
After you just
look
search
it up
the
online.
material safety data sheet for, and then type in the chemical.
Okay.
So you'll type it in. After you do that, after you've printed all your safety, we're to procedures. You'll see right here, we're at this section, procedures. Procedures are like materials. You're gonna have two categories. One category is how you design your eco column. So step 1, I went to Petco and I bought blah, blah, blah. Step 2, I did this. Step 3, I did this. It needs to be so specific that if you gave it to a stranger, they could get the products and the materials that you had and build it to look identical to yours. Identical. Okay, that's how specific your procedures. That's the point of procedures. They're just like directions. And we talked about these when y'all did your create your own experiment back in the beginning, and I said they need to be specific. Have you ever gotten directions to build a bike and they were horrible and you were, I said cussing, because they were so horrible, and y'all said yes, we had done this before, and I said that's the importance behind this is that you're doing that but in the scientific field instead of being in to build a bike. So you have to have two separate sets of procedures. After you write your procedures for your design of the eco column, you have to draw from scratch. Sit Lolly's got this. You have to draw from scratch your eco column, color it, and label it so that we have a visual to go along with all the wording you gave us. And so that needs to be drawn, colored, labeled. The labeling has to be the common name and the scientific name. It has to be the common name and the scientific name. You can go, if you like computers, and hand draw it on computers on different programs, but you cannot go and just print out a picture of someone else's from online and call it yours. You have to hand draw it, okay? Or hand do it on a computer. That's at the end of the design of your procedures section. Yes, ma'am?
Is this going to be on Canvas?
Uh-huh. Sure will be. After you do that, you're then going to do each one of the procedures for the kits. If you can't remember the procedures, you know you have those laminated sheets that are in there. Take pictures of those so that you can use those to type up the nitrate kit, how you do it. You cannot just copy and paste this and try to like take a picture and print it out. That doesn't count. You have to type it in the right format to sequence how a lab write-up would be done. After you've done that, you then have to identify the control group, experimental group, independent variable, and dependent variable of your experiment. You don't have a control group though, really, do you? What would the control group be? Actual, think about it.
Us.
Like in the earth.
You are hitting there. What is it? Not fish food. What is the control group? Someone just tell me what a control group is. Let's start with that. Something that doesn't change and it's in its normal environment.
Wouldn't it be us?
So what would it be?
Like a fish on earth. Just
There
like
you go. Say it loud.
like a fish on earth.
A fish on earth. Earth is what we're trying, that's our control group, is the whole earth, right? So that's what we're looking at to compare our experiment with. So that would be your control group. Your experimental group would be, you could say my partner in our eco column is your experimental group. Independent variable. What do you ask yourself when you want to know the independent variable? What do you ask yourself? Thank you for that.
What can do well without a letter code?
Well, what is an independent variable? What is it?
It's the one that we doesn't use something else. The one that you change.
It's the one you change and it doesn't depend on anything else. It's the one that you deliberately change. So, and that's what you're looking at. The dependent variable is what you're measuring. So the independent variable, what were we looking at in this experiment? We were looking at, let's go back to the hypothesis. What was on the if side that I gave y'all?
Balance of biogeochemicals.
Lainey hit it. Say it one more time.
The balance of biogeochemical cycles.
The balance of the biogeochemical cycles. That's your independent variable. What can you measure based on that? What can you measure? What was on the opposite side, on the then side of that hypothesis?
If your animals
There you go. So survival of your organisms is your dependent variable. Okay? So then we get to the data. The data is going to be, and you're just going to take that chart you've been working on, type it up, put it in there. After you type up that chart and it says healthy or not healthy for every single thing, then we're going to use that chart. So you have to have pH, was it healthy or not healthy and why? Nitrate, was it healthy or not healthy and why? For every single day. After you finish that, now we've got to do something with that data to give someone a visual representation. You're going to have 3 different line graphs. One line graph will have everything that is in ppm. Everything that's in ppm. What was in ppm? Say it loud. Nitrate. Carbon dioxide. Say it loud. Phosphate. Dissolved oxygen. What was in pH? pH. What was in Celsius? Temperature. Those can't fall on the ppm line graph, so you have to make them their own line graph. So you'll have 3 total line graphs. One will have all the ppms on it, one will have just the pH, and one will have just the temperature. And everything needs to be, all axes need to be labeled. The title of each of those charts needs to be labeled. The lines need to be colored if you have multiple lines so that we can see which line is which. And that's how to do the line graphs. You also in your data need to have 3 pictures printed off of your eco column. They need to be dated and 3-sentence observation of it. So for instance, day 1, fish is happy and healthy, water looks super clear, all things are functioning the way that they should. Then you give me another day and you're like, the water looks a little cloudy, and you give that explanation of that right there. And then you do the day a 3rd picture on top of that. And then after that, we get to the conclusion. When we get to the conclusion, this is where y'all are really gonna get it. So conclusion is the conclusion of our entire process that we've been going through. This is where you have to use APA format. What does APA format mean? It means you have to have an abstract at the beginning of your paper. Does anyone know what an abstract is? An abstract is basically another word for a summary. If you are a scientist and you're moving really quick through papers and you want to find a research paper, you don't want to read a 100-page research paper to find that that research paper had nothing in it that you needed. So how can you look at something real quick and see if it might have content that you need to read? Read the abstract. And then that gives you a quick knowing of, I need to read this, or I'm moving on to the next research paper to get my information. So you have an abstract. It just needs to be a paragraph or two about what your entire conclusion paper is about. You also have to have references in an APA format. What are references? They're very similar to a works cited, just a little bit different. So you have to have references as well. Then after you have all of that, there are two ways to do APA format. You can pick whichever one you like, but you need to research what they are. The main thing is that you have to have parenthetical documentation. Do y'all know what that is? Each paragraph as you're writing and as you change who you got information from, you have to cite it within the paper. Parenthetical documentation. Make sure your paper has an abstract. It has references. It has parenthetical documentation. It's grammatically correct. And I want to shoot you guys real straight. You know that I am always right. I'm very honest with you. I will read every one of these papers. I will torture myself. And I will be, thinking, why did I assign this as I'm reading them? I guarantee you it happens to me every year. But the value in it for you to get the outcome is so important. So I will read every sentence. I will add commas where you need commas. I will make sure that there is no plagiarism. Your paper has to be different from your partner's. Do not work with your partner writing papers, or you will accidentally steal their ideas and your paper will look like theirs, and it can't. This whole project, you've worked as a team, but now that you've worked as a team, I need you to take away the information on your own so you have it here so that you're prepared with the knowledge that you need to know over aquatic ecology. So that conclusion, what it's going to include in it is it's going to be a summary of your testing, so it's basically giving the wording of your data. It's going to say how that represents the biogeochemical cycles, how the biogeochemical cycles actually work in nature, any problems you had, so if your fish died, if you had to change out the water because you wanted to save your fish, if you had any leaking from the top, you need to explain that that was modeling erosion, that if nitrates get into your system, what it does, if too many phosphates get into your system, what it does, how does that happen in nature? You're basically combining your eco column with nature and showing all the problems that could exist and how do we fix them though once there is a problem. So let's say because we have been all putting fertilizers on our lawn and we have a problem with too many fertilizers in our water systems. Now that we're there, how do we go back and fix it? And you have to put that in your paper as well. So not only that it went wrong, but how are we going to fix it now that it's gone wrong? That paper has to be the end conclusion. I normally don't like to put a number on it, and I'm really okay with not a number, but to get all of this that I've listed here, it easily will have to be 10 pages double spaced on that conclusion. Okay?
Oh God.
Notice the title I gave you. Remember at the beginning? Death by Bagot? There was a reason.
That's what it's gonna be.
Wait, that's
Okay.
just for the conclusion or like
How
for
would
all
that
everything?
show up?
So your conclusion is 10 pages by itself.
Just
It's double spaced, so it's really 5, right?
The conclusion?
Uh-huh.
oh my God.
Hey, you can turn the video off now because I think we're good. You just want to